Welcome to our session. This session is looking specifically on some of the more important challenges that firms in practice are facing in adopting digital technology. Yeah, please come in. The tickets are free now, so you don't have to pay. So my name is Martin Martinov. I work with Innovate UK, leading our program on next generation professional services, which is it's a major investment program that supports professional and financial services like accounting, law, insurance, and currently we're investing over £26 million to support the sectors in adopting digital technologies. Most of our work is around creating the communities, running networks of people in practice, to administer grants and support innovation programs through various competitions. But for today's session, we wanted to focus on one specific initiative, which is we support two academic adoption accelerators. And one of them, tips, and you can have brochures everywhere on the chairs, is specifically designed to support small and mid-tier accounting and practices in their adoption of technology. And I'm really happy that here with us are Dr. Semerit Rubin, who leads the work on the accelerator, and also have people in practice, so Ben Browson and Ben Lee, who can share their real-life experience in their approach in dealing with and technologies. And actually, I want to ask you guys if you can first kind of briefly introduce yourselves and where you are on your stage in adoption and thinking about innovation and technology.
Shall I go first?
Yeah.
Hi everyone, I'm Ben Lee. We should have sat together, both Ben. This is going to confuse everyone. We're going to just keep interrupting each other. But I'm a Web3 and disruptive tech partner at a firm called Anderson. So I mainly deal with clients that are building a lot of tech in this space, in Web3. Blockchain, AI, all of these sort of complementary technologies. That's what I do day in, day out. And I love that because I'm generally a bit of a nerd and a geek myself, so that absolutely fits my own personality. In terms of our sort of digital adoption, my background, having worked at a number of different firms, some of them have been small, some of them have been mid-tier. It's been very different along the way. At my last firm, I was actually head of digital strategy, and we had much different problems then than we do at the firm that I have now, for example, based on size, which we will no doubt go into in more detail later on. But I would say that we're always on this digital innovation pathway because there's always new things coming out, there's always new things to consider, so always on that journey.
Ben?
Appreciated. So I think it's good afternoon. We can say good afternoon, everyone. So, name is Ben Brownson. I am a Group Board Director at Royce Bean Green Chartered Accountants based in Manchester. We are a general practice. We have a tax specialist team. We have an audit team. We have corporate finance team. We have plenty of other teams, payroll, etc. as a firm. We are at the bottom end of the top 100. We have 100 people within our firm. We are ranked 96th, I believe. But not that it's important, but in terms of our digital adoption journey, I joined a couple of years ago. The firm is very traditional, is I think how I would word it. So it wouldn't be uncommon to walk into a room with lots of paper files. That is not something I've ever seen in my background, and certainly something that our technological journey we're certainly getting rid of. In terms of our strategy and where we're up to, we're very much a Microsoft-focused practice. We really appreciate that a lot of people spend a lot of their time using Microsoft-based equipment. We also appreciate that we pay an awful lot a year to our dear friends at Microsoft as part of the license. So really understanding what's in that license package is really important and getting the most out of it. In terms of our journey thereafter, beyond adoption of the Microsoft-based products and understanding the Dataverse and other tech geeky pieces that certainly we can touch on outside this session, we're looking to make things as simple as possible. We've got a real range of our users internally, and we've got a real range of clients externally who adopt tech in different ways. It's very much at our stage now of, we still have pieces of paper lying around, unfortunately, but they are going onto our system. We're standardizing our document management system through SharePoint. We're standardizing as much as we can through standard business processes throughout our group, and also using clever little tools like Power Automate, which I'm sure, Martin, we will touch on shortly.
Yeah. Samar, do you mind introducing yourself and tell us a bit more about the tips? Yeah.
Right. So I can barely hear those guys here. So luckily we prepared before, so I can just try to understand what you're saying here. So I'm Dr. Zamaret Rubin. I'm from Oxford Brookes University, and I'm an academic. And I co-lead a new product and a thing that didn't exist before we created that. So it's an innovation adoption accelerator. So I don't know how many of you know what's an accelerator. So it's all for those guys out there for the tech side to accelerate innovation, but a little is known about the adoption. So that's where the government said, okay, there is a market failure here. Firms do not know how to innovate. You don't know what you don't know. It is called in our jargon in academia the absorptive capacity. How do I know where to go? What should I look for? How do I innovate? How far should I anticipate? How do I connect the silos of processes that I have within my organization? So that's why we applied for funding from government, around £2 million for the next few years. And what we do is we work with small, medium-sized firms on adoption of technology. And as Ben said here, we try small off-the-shelf products like Power Automate, and how does it connect from the internal processes that you have. You can build on that the Power BI, or you can connect through the connectors to other systems. But basically, what we aim is to educate small, medium-sized firms how to innovate, how to think about process, but not necessarily only the accountancy part, but also the business part of a small, medium size. So that's what we do, and we have several cohorts planned. We just finished graduate number 1. So we just finished our first cohort, and we're going to run a few more cohorts. So if you are a small, medium size accountancy firm, just get in touch. We got the leaflets on the chairs.
Thank you, Samar. And within UKRI, this has been a really important aspect in developing our program. So on one level, we're mindful of the broader long-term strategic conversations around AI and developing a future-proofing practices, but also want to focus on the real challenges that firms are facing here and today, and keep it grounded in real business challenges. So that's why, with the way we wanted to structure the conversation this afternoon, lunchtime, is first of all think about what are the challenges from my experience in adoption of technology, but also think about what are the pathways, so what are the opportunities, what are the ways of actually approaching this. And we intentionally invited two bands because they both have slightly different approach in thinking and developing ideas to illustrate that there are different pathways each firm can take, and actually with the help of the accelerator and also with the other programs within UKRI, we could help with the strategy. So actually, let's start with maybe kind of Ben Lee in terms of reflecting on your experience. So what are the challenges or the emerging challenges in terms of adoption, innovation adoption?
Yeah, sure. So in terms of, and I'll briefly give you my background in terms of my way of thinking as well, because I'm the kind of annoying accountant that gets really annoyed with the software that he uses. And because, as I might have mentioned earlier on, I'm a bit of a geek, I like a bit of coding. So I've always sort of looked at a platform and thought, right, this is what it's giving me, but what is it not giving me? Actually, what are the benefits here and what should it be doing? I remember annoying when I was training about 20 years or so ago now, I annoyed the partners in the firm that I was working for because I started putting Visual Basic into my spreadsheet, started doing jobs a lot quicker, and the clients actually ended up complaining because they thought they weren't getting value for money because I wasn't spending enough time on the job, right? So these are sort of some of the ways that certainly I think of when it comes to approaching things. Now, interestingly, we don't use Microsoft. Well, we do use bits of Microsoft, but we predominantly use the Google Suite. And one of the things that we have to look at there in order to, I say, get the right efficiencies and various other things is third-party products. What's the right fit for our business? How do we go out and evaluate that what's the cost, and fundamentally, how is it using the data that either we're contributing or it's contributing to us? What does the API do? Now that may well, I imagine, create a better overview or a need or requirement, sorry, for a more holistic overview of what's going on in terms of risk. Certainly where you're using APIs and various other things, there's risks associated with APIs. You might have heard there's been a number of data breaches as a result of endpoint API hacks, Bumble in 2020. So that's the way we kind of approach that. And in order to implement them, there's a lot of work that goes into the terms and conditions. How is it handling data? Is it compliant with the regulations? Is it compliant with what and how we want that data to be used? And as you can imagine, with all these tools, there's a lot of offerings in the market. How do you then go about determining which is the right one for longevity, for the project at hand? You don't want to be changing third-party providers every 6 months, 12 months, however long something might last. So that's kind of our approach to looking at it. I'm conscious of hogging the mic already, because there's all sorts of other issues with adoption in terms of people, but if that's another area we can talk about in a minute, I'm more than happy to hand the microphone to someone else.
Yeah. So, Ben, when we had a conversation, we had a slightly different take or different approach. So what other challenges do you have experienced, and what are the differences?
My background, I am a chartered accountant. I do have to look in the mirror regularly and remind myself of that. But in terms of our tech journeys, there is a difference, not just in Google versus Microsoft, and I suppose we don't start that riot here today, but in terms of, I'm very much not a techie. I'm very much about simplicity, keeping it as easy as possible and getting the most value from what we already have, and how can we take that to the next layer. So our Microsoft journey is about no code, low code at best, so apologies. I know it might be, I thought as much. So it's about using pieces of tech like Power Automate, and I'll touch on that more in a second, but in terms of the adoption journey, we had a number of partners and individuals in the firm who went, well, where on earth do you start with this journey full stop? Right. We kind of know what we need. We need something for AML. We need something for document management systems. We need probably something to help us generate financial statements, tax returns. And really what happened as our starting point was building this mapping as to what different elements we needed. We started by looking at, okay, well, what do we already have, and what can we enhance and take it to the next layer before we went out to the market? And apologies to everyone on the shop floor, but before we went to market looking for those products, we just mapped it out first and foremost. And then really you've got different elements. I know I'm touching on the adoption question, I suppose, ahead of time, but you can't just adopt tech overnight. It's absolutely not going to happen. That's where, in my world, Rome was built in a day, but you can't enforce that in the same sort of timeline. So really it's about building a project plan as to when you're going to adopt the tech, probably pivot that for any potential technological faults, because unfortunately they do happen. And really working with people, bring them on the journey, have a lot of open and honest conversations with people. I think from a people side, to summarize it, everyone should be aware that change is incoming within the firms. Absolutely. I think that needs to be black and white statement plastered everywhere, that everyone in the firm, no matter how experienced they are, change is here. And one of the strangest things I think I find is when you come across an accountant, let's go with that, who doesn't like change. You suggest, I'm going to change Power Automate, or I'm going to change the piece of tech, but you see them outside with their new fancy phone. I don't remember that phone sort of not being a Nokia 3310, but it now seems to be this fancy Android and fancy iPhone.
How they're using it.
It's not helping my case, is it really, Ben? But it's bizarre on that two sides of it, but change is here to stay. It is absolutely one of the things Ben has rightly said, is it's a journey. This technological journey is just going to be a permanent one, and we can certainly talk about adoption next, perhaps.
Yeah.
So in our accelerator, the first cohort that we run, in general, in the future as well, we recruit, so the accelerator is for law firm and accountancy firms, so it's professional services. So we take on board the accountants and the lawyers. We don't take to run through our accelerator the IT people, right? So we want those that can define the challenge they want to improve. Those would lead the company through that innovation process, okay? So it's not the tech side to define, or the IT people that would drop a technology on that firm and say, this is what you should use, and this is what it's going to be like. No, we want those that actually operate, run the processes within the organization to absorb that understanding of how to innovate, how to design an automation flow, and how to connect different processes. So that's the first thing. There is a challenge where the thinking in those firms, normally in accountancy firms, is just like, here we go, a tool, IT would lead, you all have to use that, and then you don't get the skills, you don't get the understanding, and the adoption is not really working. And the second thing I would say in terms of challenge, when a firm try to think about, okay, there are so many solutions, and we had the conversation before, I get like bombarded with another technology, another provider, etc. You need to think about the data that you accumulate, right? So the data ownership, you own the data, you generate the data, and in the future, not long, in the long distance, that those data points has great value, great value for AI to leverage on those data points that you as an organization accumulate. So you might not see that today, but the data point that you connect from different processes, they have huge value for further innovation. And last, I'll say, innovation is not a one-off, it's a changing behavior. So you need to think long-term when you think about what's next.
Can I
Yeah, of course, yeah.
very quickly add on
Yeah.
to that, because what you said is, what you both said is absolutely spot on. I think for anyone sitting in the audience thinking, well, how do I recognize those challenges? How do I know what I need to change?
Yeah.
I just kind of wanted to add on to that, in my experience, is to listen. I know somebody 20 years younger than me is going to have much different and much better ideas than I probably do. They've certainly got more energy to go around to every single stall here today and find out what everyone's doing. But that idea of actually engaging with people throughout that process to understand what's taking time. I've certainly been at firms where they've gone, well, this is the process, do the process. And you're like, but it can be better because we could do this. They go back to your point, people don't like change. Yeah. So in order to try and actually ascertain what those needs are, I found the most important thing is just to listen. Sorry, I just kind of wanted to...
No, I think that's really important. Actually, I think a number of times and actually want to connect this whole idea of a data silos within organizations. And you guys mentioned the human element, which I think is quite often not properly kind of understood and explored. So can we talk a little bit more, not necessarily from the perspective of only of training and skills, but also mindset? I know we had a conversation, we talked about, so if you think about the first layer of adoption, if it's about people and culture, so what are, and I'm trying to bring it from challenges to actually solutions or pathways. So what are the conditions we need to be thinking about creating within practice and in the demand?
It's a really interesting one, because again it comes back to the accountant is an accountant. Do they like change? Some do, clearly. Wonder who they are, Ben. So we tried something, because I'm that way inclined, and we know that change is happening. We wanted to achieve that. Absolutely, conversations with people about how they feel about it. We did all of that side. I was the least popular person after Christmas last year or the year before. I moved our stationery cupboard without telling anyone, which was probably the least popular thing I've ever done. But to move a stationery cupboard in a firm of accountants, as you'll probably know if you're part of a traditional firm, it's very much blasphemous. And I did it without anyone noticing, but the rationale behind it wasn't just because I'm very OCD and certain things have to go in certain places, I promise. It was actually to see what people were saying about change. How did they really react? How did they really feel? And ignoring the certain vocabulary and choice words that people certainly used at that point in time, we got a real flavour as who liked change, who didn't like change. And then in terms of just kind of going on to that journey of the solution side to touch on early, we knew who we needed to target. We knew who we needed to spend our time and energy working really closely with to say, okay, just don't want to scare you, but this is coming. And we'd walk through them maybe slightly longer than we would other colleagues. And this is where I really rely on a fantastic team of colleagues alongside me who are extremely patient and work closely with people. And you just educate, you converse, you ask for their thoughts. Oh, do you think it could do that? And funnily enough, they come up with some fantastic answers and actually come up with more solutions than even we can see. And this is where I suppose there's elements of using people's experience to actually recognize the tech can catch up with them and their ways of working. So, yeah, I know you've got a similar view.
Agree. And I think, from what I've heard you saying, it's, for me, I mean, this is all emotional. Take them on the journey with you. Nobody likes change, especially when it's forced upon you. That's when you're going to face the most defense and people who will complain. They'll then become detractors. And mindset within a workplace is a very easy thing to be manipulated. So take the time to explain why something will make somebody's life easier. Show it to them, make them a part of that journey, get their thoughts, their contributions, make little working groups, get ambassadors for whatever change you're trying to promote within the workplace. And sooner rather than later, I think those barriers that people have around change will start declining because they'll see the good that you're trying to do. And it's not at a personal level, something that's just going to make their life harder.
I hope you don't mind.
But of course,
Sorry, I'm going to do a plug. I am. So I think we've touched on different elements of experienced individuals or people who don't like change, and we've talked about, at partners' tables, certainly there are people who say yes, certain people who say no. The best thing that we have done to self-educate is get involved in TIPS Pathway A, because actually it shows the real art of the possible. Power Automate is actually a really simple tool, and that's coming from me. It must be simple. And it can do so much. It saves so much time for the accountants, it saves so much time for the secretarial team, the admin teams, for the clients, etc. And the sessions that we had really showed what the art of the possible of, well, actually the here and now. Obviously, certain firms are not yet in a position to fully adopt things like Power Automate today, but it really showed the art of the possible, and bringing people along that journey is a fantastic opportunity.
Yeah, I'll add to that that when I did my PhD 20 years ago, when I investigated how innovation happens across professional services, what we mostly looked at, academics, in particular economists, we looked at R&D, research and development investment. So if you wanted to to engage with a new software or a new tool, that would require long term of R&D intensive integration. You have to employ people in-house or engineers. You have your racks of servers in-house. We didn't have the vision about the cloud back then 20 years ago. So that's how you envisage how innovation would work like, and that's how government actually used to relate to support innovation. But today, everything is flat, as you mentioned. If you just take, for example, Power Automate, it's no-code system. You can get the practitioners to design a flow, drag and drop. This is how you automate a process, click submit, and that's it. You transform your organization. But that's where it takes me to the argument that the change should be through those that understand the process, rather than the IT people who say, here you go, that's the tool you should use. So because it's becoming so flat, I'll give you, can I say another thing? So I'll give you another example from the TIPS accelerator. We got 2 lawyers that participated in our accelerator. And after they finish that, they have no idea about technology whatsoever. So we were training them about one of the tools of Microsoft. And after they graduated from cohort 1, they transformed their organization. So they are a family business. They provide accountancy services, legal services, financial services. There were 2 lawyers in that organization. So they flipped the organization relation to how processes can be automated, and now they are leading the full organization about how things should look like, rather than take whatever system is out there. So that's something they learned through the accelerator?
I think this is really important. I mean, let's delve a little bit more into it. Like, what are the different pathways? Because all of the other firms here are on a journey to wherever they want to go. So what are and I know you guys have slightly different, and I'm trying to get to this like slightly different approach to when you think about choosing of the hundreds of different applications and approaches. So let's share some kind of practical ideas and an approach on solutions, or how would you go on that journey, and maybe even draw some more illustrations and from the accelerator examples. So.
Please speak, sir. I keep losing that game, actually, it seems. But in terms of the practical elements, we sat down and cleared a day. We turned off laptops, threw them away, well, recycled, and really talked about tech internally. And we got a load of accountants, we got a load of kind of the ops side of our business to really just talk. What do? You get your schedule, your 9 till 5, and what sort of processes do you actually undertake? And once we got under the hood of that, the ops guys sat there across the table and went, oh, you do that, yeah? What about doing this? And the creativity just flowed. But one of the really basic things we did was business process flow documentation, which just documented the hell out of everything. What do you currently do? How do you do it? And we really invested time in starting to understand the business processes. And beyond that, we turned it into a bit more about the data journey. So again, too many corporate phrases, clearly, and tech phrases, but the data journey, understanding, one, your client data, but two, your internal data. Again, Samarit's rightly touched on the future aspects, or the here and now aspects of how powerful that data will become within an organization and for your clients. But we've started to really enhance processes. So I'll give you a really easy example of business recovery, insolvency. So it might not apply to everyone, but in terms of their onboarding process, it was very manual, it's very laborious. Now we've sat down, we've got a lovely piece of paper, and we've gone, that's what we're tackling this week. We've actually trained someone up in Agile Project Management, so the Prince 2 qualification, highly recommend it. And that individual is looking at Agile Project Management, so they sit over the top, they're not a technical practitioner, but they work really closely, almost like the equivalent of a technology or an operations business partner, is how I suppose word it. And they sit there together and they map things out. So sprint, I can't remember how many sprints, but I'm definitely not physically sprinting. I'm putting that out there. There's no physical sprints involved. But we're going through a sprint where we're just focusing on one small part of the onboarding process. And once we've done it in business recovery, well, actually, we know that every other part of our business operates in such a similar way because how we act as a group. It will be a copy-paste across the rest of the group. So again, that's one way in which we've looked at it, is just map it all out, put it on a piece of paper, and if you're a bit more high-tech, probably more like Ben, it's not a physical piece of paper, it's a bit more high-tech, and just map it out, just nice and easy.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. It's just all about that engagement, and it will depend very much on the size of your firm, I would say, because at a small firm, it's very easy to engage with people. Back to what I was saying earlier about listen. I mean, I've held sessions where I've just gone, what do you do and what do you hate about your job? And in the hope that it's not working with me, we'll actually have a really productive conversation about, right, most people get frustrated by things that they either feel take too long or they feel aren't unnecessarily required, or certain other aspects. So actually to understand that and actually then look at that process, as you were saying, in terms of mapping it out to see how things can be done differently, is integral to then forming a plan of how you go about changing, your digital innovation. Now, that obviously gets harder with the, as the firm grows. And if you're in a sort of a mid-tier firm, whether you've grown organically or whether you might have actually gone out and acquired lots of different business units which have all come along with their own softwares, and then you've got that bigger piece, as you just mentioned there, to consider, and then you've got the change mindset, and you've got different competing softwares, and that's when you get that whole overview. Sorry.
That sometimes we forget when we think about innovation. We think about, okay, so we talk about accountancy, so it's about accountancy innovation. accountancy and law firms are businesses as well. They have to manage a business and to be efficient how they manage a business. So what we look at in the Tips Accelerator is the business of practice, the business of accountancy, and the practice of accountancy as well, right? So they're two different things. So the business means like you have a onboarding client that's onboarding clients regardless of what business you run. You have your HR system, your billing system, etc. So to look how to innovate in that perspective as well, and how innovation there, and going back to data again, how the data that you collect and accumulate there can help you in other processes as well. Okay, so we need to think about both things, not only on the practice only.
Yeah, go ahead.
Slightly tweak the approach, and I think you've both certainly got examples here of there's a lot of merch out there, there's a lot of exciting things out there. One of the things that I've certainly seen from colleagues around our DFK association is and other firms is adopting tech too quickly. So there's so many shiny pieces of equipment out there that are fantastic. They might have an impact, but we've seen a firm actually this morning give me a call, which was, we've adopted this piece of tech, we're now 2 years in, adoption rates are quite low, it doesn't integrate, the data journey makes absolutely no sense. And I think if there's one piece of advice from the other side of the adoption journey, it's don't go jumping into anything. And that's not the accountant in my head saying, but don't forget about the contractual commitment. I promise. It's more about that case of there's a journey. Don't push yourselves too far.
Sort of reminded me there of Zero Shop, and I'm hoping they're not going to... Sorry, Zero Marketplace, I'm hoping they're not going to smoke me from afar, but do you remember when that came out and there was a million apps on there and you could go and do so many things, but honestly, how many of them have survived? And if they were worth their salt, they've probably been acquired by Zero. But, it is absolutely that mentality of take your time to do things properly. Sorry.
No, agree.
Yeah. And actually, can we draw from because you have quite a few firms already within the accelerator, what other best practices we can share? And I know that we talked a lot about no-code, low-code, and actually using a range of very available...
generalize that when you think about innovation, first think about the challenge you want to solve, right? So what are those pitfalls for your organization that takes a lot of time, and just like processes are stuck, and or you have multiple places where you store data in different places, and you don't know where's the last version, or where how to connect those. So where are the challenges for you as an organization? And only then go and search for a solution. And the second thing is, when you think about a solution, think about how open it is. So not only about what it does for your organization, whether it can solve that challenge, but also how open it is for further innovation. As I said before, you don't really know what would be the next stage for you to innovate, so therefore you need to be forward-thinking as possible, and it is a challenge we do appreciate for small, medium-sized businesses to think really far ahead, because you don't have the resources, you don't have that level of absorptive capacity. But you need to think as open as possible for future connectivity, future leverage. And it's not necessarily on the tech, the new tech, it's also about changing regulation. So, for example, you can, 10 years ago, we didn't think about open banking as a regulatory framework that will allow you to connect to data that you can leverage on. So that's the thing. You need to think about as open as possible for your further next stages of innovation.
I think actually that's really important. And maybe let's spend a few more minutes think about what else first we need to be thinking in terms of trends and future developments, both in terms of regulatory, but also there's a wider ecosystem and change happening. So,
yeah, I would say the things that certainly I'm keeping my eye on, and whilst we're on regs, sorry guys, I know we're accountancy convention, but let's talk about regulation quickly. But we've had GDPR. That was a big change for the industry. We've got the Data Protection and Data Information Bill number 2 that's now in the House of Lords. which is sort of changing some of the UK aspects of GDPR. We've got the EU Data Act, we've got the EU Artificial Intelligence Act. The latter I find fascinating. It's a very comprehensive piece of legislation governing, more specifically, providers of AI in this space to EU citizens, although it does convey some considerations for users, which I think is very important when we consider AI is the latest buzzword, right? We see this all the time. I'm sure there's lots of exhibitors here that are selling their AI innovations, and I'm sure they're all great. But the questions we need to ask ourselves are, how does that AI function? What data is it using? Are there inherent biases within that? And the EU AI Act is actually very good for conveying the need for transparency throughout AI models of the data and how it's being used, because you don't want to be a firm that actually finds out you're giving up information to feed into an AI model, and the product of that AI model is a PR nightmare waiting to happen, shall we say. So whilst that's kind of quite outside the box of just digital innovation, I think it's very important to make sure we are keeping abreast of these regulations that may affect how we're interacting with all of these elements of software as part of that innovation plan.
Yeah,
I agree.
Massively so. And I agree with both points. You know, the openness is our approach. We don't know what we don't know. We don't know what's coming around the corner. And if you do know the lottery numbers, just let me know. That'd be great. But in terms of next steps, what the future of the tech industry is, the future of, or the art of the possible of AI, you know, these are all questions that are not yet solved. We don't know where the journey's going, and therefore I think one of the big things is, if you're embarking on a project, really don't go niche. Don't try and recreate the wheel or recreate a very specific piece of software within your firm, or adopt a piece of software within your firm to solve a minute problem. There are so many great pieces of technology, particularly the ones that we're talking about on Path B, which we've not talked about, but probably run out of time for Path B conversation. So there are leaflets, definitely worthwhile having a look at. But in terms of that, keeping it open, there are pieces of kit that you can adopt as a firm that are out of the box, are inexpensive, I promise, that can keep your firm doors wide open to being able to react to change, be really agile, be really scalable. Again, there's a load of opportunity, particularly out here today and within each of our firms, in terms of the future direction of travel. So keeping the software open, the regulation's absolutely critical, but again, it's just being mindful and asking the right questions. And one of the things of Path B, I will sneak it in, is there's an expert and plenty of expertise within Path B that we've been able to leverage of people who are already doing this day in, day out. So again, it's asking the right people at the right time, the right questions, and knowing them, and building a peer group and cohorts, and working with the great people.
And can I just ask you, before they play the music and kick us out of the stage, can you tell us what's next for the accelerator, and how actually firms can engage with you, what they can do, how they can get involved?
Right, so we are recruiting, so it's free service because it's the government identified that as a market failure, and they want to support small, medium-sized accountancy and law firm. So we are recruiting for the next cohort. We're going to run 4 more cohorts, 5 maybe, until the project will finish. And it's an online acceleration program. Just go to Tips Accelerator online, fill in a form, we'll go back to you, and you can participate in our next cohort for the acceleration. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much. So I just want to leave with 3 things. So first of all, connect with us on LinkedIn, find us. We will be here around. We have some more colleagues like Sarah and some others from Innovate UK. Martin Sprink is also here, so you can talk more about the Accelerator. So that's the first thing. The second one is do engage with the team on the Accelerator, and whether to explore whether to join in the cohorts, one of the next cohorts, or to generally talk about and connect with other peers. And the third thing is do connect on UKRI or Innovate UK's website. We have a number of other programs and engagement opportunities for you. For example, you can join the AI for Services Network to actually hear about other innovation and investment opportunities. And please join me in thanking our amazing panelists, and we hope to see you around. Thank you very much. Brilliant.